Hey there, we are at BronzeAge Art Casting. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jamie.
And we're with Siouxland Libraries. And have you ever been down to see the amazing sculptures downtown for the SculptureWalk?
Yes, I love them.
Right, it's one of my favorite things to do. We get to find out how artists make those come to life. We're so pumped, we can't wait to show you exactly what happens with this sculpture and other things like it. So stay tuned, it's gonna be awesome. Yeah!
So we are here with Lisa Meyer, who is the community outreach person here, and she's going to show us from start to finish the process of having a clay kind of beginning sculpture all the way here to an end bronze art sculpture that you might see on the SculptureWalk. So Lisa, tell us all about it.
I will absolutely do that. The whole process is called lost wax casting, and it's an ancient process. So check that out if you want to learn more about it. It's happened around the world in different cultures, and there's a long, wonderful history involving artwork and hot metal. So, yeah. Well, most artists will bring us a sculpture made out of clay, some sort of clay that they've created, and they basically drop it off at our door and they go away. And then we take their clay sculpture through the lost wax casting process to turn it into bronze. And then they come back and they pick that up on the other end.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
A lot of them do their own work, but we help them out through this process because it takes some time.
Yeah.
So, all right, so imagine you've created a clay sculpture and you bring it to us. What will happen from there is we need to make a mold of that. And we make what's called a rubber mold and then take it through the rest of the steps. It's kind of crazy, but we're going to make a little, we call this a shim. It's paper, it's little plastic things, and we need to divide the sculpture in half. And so we're going to attach these little pins, and we're going to make this shim that divides the piece into two halves. And after we do that, we're going to mix up this gooey, cool rubber that we have different colors that we use. And it's kind of gooey when we stick it on. It's kind of like marshmallow cream. And we're going to paint the rubber on one side. Paint some rubber on the other side, but because we have the shim in between, the rubber won't stick to itself. So we're going to have rubber on this side and rubber on this side that we can pull apart. So we'll do that several times and build up a layer of rubber on both sides, and we let that cure or harden, although rubber never gets hard, it's kind of flexible. From there, we're going to add what we call plaster Paris. And we'll mix it up, and it's kind of sloppy and gooey, and it sort of ends up like melted ice cream, and then a little bit firmer ice cream. And we're going to put plaster Paris on this side and plaster Paris on this side. And remember, we've got that shim that divides the piece into two halves. So when the plaster has hardened or cured, we'll have a mold of the artist's original clay sculpture. And when we take this off, we'll see the sculpture inside. So what we're going to do is we'll pull off the plaster. See how that hardened? And you can see, this is a different color rubber, but you can see how it has two halves.
Wow.
So now from this rubber mold, which looks just like that original, we can make reproductions or replicas of that original clay sculpture. So what we do, we're going to put our rubber mold back together and put some big rubber bands on it. And we'll take hot wax, pour it in real carefully, roll it around and dump it out so there's just a really thin layer of wax coating or stuck to the inside. Then we'll do it again, pour some hot wax in. Wax is about 200 degrees. You don't want to get it on you.
So don't touch it.
Don't touch it. We'll roll it around, pour it out. There's a second layer of wax, and then we'll let that cool a little bit, pour some more wax in, roll it around, pour it out, and we'll let the whole thing cool. Once it's cool, we can take this mold off, get the plaster mold, That's also called the mother mold. It supports the rubber mold. Then we're going to pull the rubber off very carefully because inside we don't want to damage or hurt this wax reproduction. Now, this is basically the wax cooled inside that mold. Pull it out, but you see how it's hollow? Ooh, yep. Yep, that's because we didn't just fill it all the way up and let the wax harden in there. So now we have a wax reproduction or replica of that original sculpture.
Yeah, it looks just like the clay
It
sculpture.
does, just a different color, but same thing. And what we're going to do from there is, you know how we divided the sculpture? There might be what we call a seam, a mold seam, where you can see where the two pieces join. So we'll go in with little tools and chase or follow after that seam and make it look just like the artist did. So we want to hide that. And we can fix any imperfections and make it look perfect. And after we have that hollow wax reproduction of the original sculpture, what we're going to do is basically set this up for lost wax casting. So we're going to add a gating system. Trust me on this, it will make sense as we go along. And basically the gating system, it's also called a spruing system, is we're going to create a wax pour cup, like a funnel. We're going to use red wax gates, and they basically are a way to create a flow through the piece. And this is a wax vent. And so what we do is using a soldering iron, which is usually used to solder things together, but we're going to use different tools to heat up the wax to connect it and to connect these points to create this system. If we make more than one pheasant, we'd have to sprue and gate each one of the pheasants. So you've also noticed, cut out some windows from the piece.
I was just going to ask about that, so thank you for pointing that out.
We will put those back on the pheasant at the end. It all makes sense. So the reason we created these windows is our next step is to dip this wax sculpture and all of its gating system into a liquid ceramic material. And we're going to dip that wax into the liquid and pull it back out, let it dry, dip it again, coat it with some sand, let it dry, dip it again, coat it with some more sand, let it dry, and we'll repeat that cycle until we have anywhere from 7 to 10 coats of that ceramic shell. The reason we cut those windows in, I don't know if you can see that, the ceramic shell, when it was a liquid, went inside the piece, and it goes inside the piece there as well. A little bit harder to see.
Oh yeah.
So now we have ceramic shell on the outside of the wax and the inside of the wax, and it's also around all of these little bits and pieces too. The only part that doesn't have shell on it is the top. And what we're going to do is take this ceramic shell, we're going to put it in a kiln, which is a giant oven, and we're going to crank it up to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
So pretty hot.
Yeah, you'll
that's
burn
what
your cookies really fast because it gets hot to that temperature in about 20 minutes. It goes zoom. And what happens is that heat will start to melt the wax out.
Okay.
And it'll land in a big old container of water, and then it cools and we can use the wax again. And then this ceramic shell will go from, originally it's kind of yellow, right? It's going to turn white, and that means it's hardened or vitrified. So that's lost wax casting, is melting wax out of a mold. So what's going to happen with that mold?
Well, now we're going to pour something in it, right?
You're going to pour something in it.
It's like liquid metal, right?
It is.
That's essentially what
It's
we're
like
working
hot
with.
lava.
And it's going to look like lava?
It looks like lava, like runny lava. It's molten bronze, and bronze is mostly copper. It's about 95% copper, and then silicon. Silicon bronze is what it's called. But you can see now we have a really great mold where the bronze can flow in, down in through those gates, into that little space where the wax was, and then the gases, there's a lot of heat and gas, that's going to come right back up the top.
And like right now when you look at the outside, you don't see much detail, right? But on the inside, it still has all that great detail of like the pheasant's eye and the feathers.
Exactly. So it's
It's really cool.
just like the original artist's work. So That metal will take a while to cool, and when it's cool, we can break off that ceramic shell mold. It's the only way to get it out.
What do you use to break it off? Just like a hammer or any tools like that?
Jackhammers, no, just tools. Some of it, it's that ceramic shell's been through a lot of heat, a lot of hot, so it's kind of done with its job, so some of it just falls off too, so.
It's ready to be done.
It's ready to be done. But yeah, so that now will get broken off, and hopefully what's inside, if you want to hold that up.
Yeah, of course.
Yep, is,
It's heavy.
yeah, it's heavier than the wax, is a bronze reproduction of that original sculpture. So now, as you can see, that's not quite like the original sculpture. So we'll go in with different power tools and cut off those gates and
down
those
here?
vents and the pour cup, and we can melt that metal back down.
Wow.
And then with these, you actually are, do you put them back?
Yeah, we'll just glue those in.
Okay.
Glue. What kind of glue?
Well, actually, we'll weld those in, and if you want to hold up that other example.
Yeah, of course. Let me put this guy down. So then welding, it's kind of like glue, but for metal?
Sort of. So this is 2 pieces of metal. You can see that split or that seam down the middle. Now flip it over. Sure. And at the lower end here, you can see where it was 2 pieces of metal. Using heat and a little electricity and a little bit of magic, that's going to get welded. Basically those 2 sides, another piece of metal is put in there, and it kind of all melts in and it connects. Everything becomes sort of liquid and then connects across. But that doesn't look very good. So if we put this little head part in there and we welded it, it's going to not look like the original. So what we do is we grind it down so it's on the same plane, or it looks just like was there. And then we're going to add whatever texture the artist had using some other kind of tool. If you tip it just a little bit more, you're going to see after sandblasting it, you don't even know there's been a seam there. So the last step is to basically patina the sculpture, and that's, you can see the different colors that bronze takes naturally. The rainbow color comes from the heat from welding, and there's no way to keep that, it always goes away. So
It's actually kind of pretty.
it is very pretty, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll sandblast the piece, blast a bunch of sand at it to even out the color of the metal and clean up anything on the surface. And then we'll add different chemicals that actually oxidize the surface. It's like a chemical reaction that changes the very surface of the metal. And so it's a very relatively permanent color. And we can rub off areas of the patina to make it more gold or lighter. And there are different kinds of things. So if you're out looking at sculptures, you'll see, if they're bronze, you may see a lot of different colorations or patinas. So yeah, and then that's ready to go out.
I mean, this process has been absolutely incredible. I've had an amazing time. Thank you, Lisa, so much for taking the time to show us around. And everyone, get out, go see our beautiful sculptures downtown. They've got sculptures actually all over the city, and we're gonna put a list of different ones that BronzeAge Art Casting has done themselves here, and it really encourage you to just go check them all out. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
Come down yourselves too if you're ever interested in taking a tour or just learning more about the process. We'll see you soon.